Well, hey, everybody. We are here doing our first conversation on our Bible in a Year section overview. So we have 10 sections primarily that we're going to be looking at and talking about that is really just a great resource for this Bible in a Year series. And so I'm here with Dr. Gerry Breshears. And
that's me.
That's him. And he, our relationship started as my professor, and then Gerry has also just continued pouring into my life, but also investing in our church, giving lots of feedback, input on teaching, sermons, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also, when possible, pouring into our staff. And so, really honored to have you with us.
It is a huge privilege for a professor to have a student like Samuel, I say, who is an absolute rock star, and I still get to have an influence in his life, and what a huge privilege. I mean, it's such an honor to be here and be a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to have you. So, but hey, let's get into it. We're going to talk today about the law, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible.
The Pentateuch, it's often called.
The Pentateuch, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
Yep.
And traditionally, it's been held that Moses was the author. What are your views on that?
Well, he didn't sign the book. And when there's no signature on the book, and when most of it's in third person, I'm inclined to think it probably somebody else wrote it. Now, I got opinions on everything. You guys need to know, sometimes I'm right, not often, but my opinion is that he probably got a document from Adam. He probably got a document from Noah, probably got a document from other folk along the way, and he stitched them together like a patchwork quilt into what we now call the Pentateuch, the Torah, the 5 scrolls. But I think it represents what Moses put together for the people as they're going into the land. So I think it's Mosaic in its origin, but we know for a fact he didn't write it all because there's later place names in there. And I don't think he told the story of him dying on Mount Moab. Mount Nebo, looking into the land. I just don't think he wrote that because he's like dead already.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting perspective that, and it makes a lot of sense because for one person to write all of that, they'd have to be a masterful writer.
Incredibly skillfully put together, all kinds of patterns in there and such. I think it represents Mosaic material, but I doubt that he's the guy who actually sat down with a quill and wrote this out.
And wrote all of it, okay. What's the historical coverage of this, this section?
Well, it begins with the creation of the universe. In the beginning, God created everything, and then goes through Eden. I am personally inclined to think that the Eden story is about the first human beings, first image of God humans. So I'm going to put that relatively recent. When the universe is created, I just don't know. But it began with Adam and Eve as image-bearing covenant partners. And it goes through the story and ends up as they're going into the land, which is about 1400 BC.
Oh, okay. And what would you, kind of looking at all 5 of these books, what stands out to you as the big central points or emphasis, the things that would really be our big takeaways?
Yeah. First of all, it begins with God creating what I call blessable image-bearing covenant partners, Adam and Eve and their progeny, more image-bearing covenant partners, with a mission to take his goodness into the entire land from the Garden of Eden, which is like Temple Mount. And then we have the just stupid when they betray him and decide, we can do this ourselves. We don't need you, God. Really bad idea. And the spiral down ends up with Babylon, and then God calling Abraham to do a restart to set up the nation of Israel. They end up in Exodus in the Egypt under Pharaoh. God rescues them out, and then Exodus through Deuteronomy is the journey back to the land of Israel. There's a whole lot of story there you're going to explain. But that's what it is him creating this people through whom all nations on earth will be blessed when Messiah comes.
Wow.
So big story here. I mean, the big takeaway is the character of God. He is the hero of this. And that is the central thing. Who is this God who created the entire universe, who now has created a group of people and wants to have a relation despite our sinfulness and rebellion? He is a good father, frankly.
Amen. That's great. So if you want to really understand and get to know the character of God from the very beginning, you don't have to wait till Jesus.
No, no. In fact, one of the emphases is that God reveals himself. The most quoted verse in the Bible by the Bible is Exodus 34, 6 and 7. Moses in the cleft of the rock, and he's revealed as Yahweh, and he's revealed as the God who is compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, faithful, loving, forgiving, and just, and jealous, protective. Wow. And that's Exodus 34. That's the character of our God, who remains faithful, but he'll take down Pharaoh if he needs to.
Yeah.
And when we rebel against him, it's a really bad idea, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's the story of sin, which is also in there. What's the nature? I'm going to do it my way versus your way, God.
Yeah.
And that's the heart of sin.
Are there any things you'd like to maybe add to how we should approach understanding some of this, or in our personal study? I know, like, you just kind of hit on it a little bit, like you'll take care of Pharaoh, hardening Pharaoh's heart, all of these things that are they're kind of hard to wrestle with at face value.
Yeah. And that's where I think a deep meditative approach actually looks at how the story develops. If you take one verse, I'm going to harden his heart, it sounds like God's a oppressive jerk. Right. If you read the story of how he does it, he's calling Pharaoh to righteousness. Here's Pharaoh, a really, really bad guy, and God says, honor me and I'll bless you. Yeah. And he says, nah. And of course, then he ends up getting killed.
Yeah.
But that picture of how God released even to Pharaoh speaks to his goodness and grace.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Even just like, it's funny, but we were watching The Prince of Egypt the other day with the kids. And my oldest is 5, and she's like, this is where, if you didn't put this over your door, then your kids died. And just her trying to understand, like, well, why did the kids die? Or how did that happen? And obviously there's age appropriateness to understanding some things, but also I talk to so many adults that just, well, how could God do that?
Right.
The God of the Old Testament's different.
And what they don't see, they only see God being a bad guy because that's what makes the headlines.
Right.
If it bleeds, it leads. But if you read the story, this is punishment for horrible sin. Horrible sin, genocidal kind of stuff. We use genocide, but that's what Pharaoh's doing. He's genocidal maniac. Wow. Instead of God just zapping him, he calls him to righteousness 10 times. And then even when the punishment comes, he offers a way of protection for anybody with a simple sacrifice. Will you do it my way? And you end up free from all the stuff that's flying around.
Yeah.
Think of a guy coming into a shopping mall with an AK-47 spraying bullets.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that's Pharaoh.
Right.
And God is in here sacrificing himself to protect people. And that's what your story is. But we don't get that in the stories. It looks like God doesn't really kill anybody.
Right.
But that's where you read the story and meditate on it. You discover the goodness and the grace of God is the central theme there. And then I'm going to do it my way, which gets us in trouble.
That's great. Well, I'm just going to, as we kind of wrap up this section, just want to highlight for further study, meditation, understanding, the Bible Project is a great resource.
Yes.
You work a lot with the Bible Project. We're going to put some links in this, in the caption for that, if you want to go there and just continue.
Yeah, God brings them to Sinai, gives them the Mosaic covenant, how to be treasured possession, how to be a beautiful people, and then they go worship a golden calf and betray the relationship again. And God says, okay, you guys don't get to go into the land, but your kids will. He means purpose, but he still protects them. He still gives them food. He protects them from enemies. He's still the good God, even though they've lost the blessing going into the land. So the old joke, they need GPS because they couldn't find their way to the land. No, they're just waiting to die because they've lost the blessing because of continued sin. God remains faithful, and that's the story of the Pentateuch.